Hello to everyone listening to this channel, a viewer writes.
All these stories about weddings, divorces, women who stopped being girls a long time ago but still act like they are young and not done living yet. Somehow all of it crosses through the life of almost every one of us. And I am no exception. I am 30 now. I have been divorced for 3 years. I have a wonderful son. Let me tell you a little about my former family. We were together for about 10 years. In reality, a little less than that, but I do not want to give details that are too recognizable. Everything was basically like everyone else's life. First, we lived together for 2 or 3 years. Then the manipulation began. If we were not getting married, then maybe it was easier to break up. And of course, I was in love up to my ears, so I fell for it. We rushed into marriage. The next stage of manipulation was this. If we were not going to have a child, then we should get divorced. So we rushed into having a baby. About a year after our son was born, I was told that all of these things, the wedding and the child, had supposedly been planned in order to change something in our family and in our relationship. For me, our relationship had been more or less ideal. No screaming, no fighting, no constant scandals. But throughout our life together, she kept trying to convince me that I needed to change something. Of course, first, you owe something. Second, you must change. Only now do I understand that she was always dissatisfied with something, and I, being not the smartest man at the time, and simply because I loved her so much, kept falling for it. I kept trying to change things in myself without even asking whether I needed those changes at all. I should have said right away, either you like me the way I am or we separate. But of course, I understand that only now. By the way, her relationship with my parents and my sister was always tense. I would even say bad at times. Very often she would tell me stories or try to convince me that my parents treated me poorly, that they treated my sister better than me. And if I think about it, yes, sometimes there probably were moments when my sister got slightly different treatment, but I did not really pay attention to it. It did not hurt me that deeply. What hurt much more was that my wife constantly tried to emphasize it. She kept poking at that spot, as if she were trying to plant some feeling in me or pull me away from my own family.
Friends, I have talked about this many times. Let us repeat it for the newcomers so everyone understands how this works. The scheme is simple, and it is dictated by nature itself. If you want to extract the maximum amount of benefits and resources from a man, you need to redirect all of his attention and all of his capabilities toward yourself. But if his focus is still floating somewhere else, with his parents, his sister, relatives, friends, God forbid friends, because friends are a terrifying thing in this arrangement, then you will not get the maximum effect. To get that effect, you need to redirect him in such a way that this little ATM decides, all by himself, that it was fully and completely his own decision. That is important, because if that diversion does not happen, the control system over this ATM can be lost. Besides, relatives are always an expense category, including emotional, practical, and sometimes financial expenses, and you cannot simply cut them off directly. If she says, "Do not help your relatives," the ATM will say, "But that is sacred, and there will be nothing she can do." But if she approaches indirectly, pulls the right strings, and quietly reconfigures the system, then why not? It works. Let us continue.
We had an apartment and 2 cars. Overall, we had everything needed for a good life. But there were constant conversations about money not being enough. She worked too, and when she went on maternity leave, she was receiving almost the same money she had earned at work. So our income barely dropped. But still, all the time, there was this headache that we did not have enough. The person simply had no idea what not enough really means, or how other people live. But that is a separate matter. I am also one of those not real men who, after divorce, do not hand their apartment over to the ex-wife. Thank you to my grandmother for that apartment, and thank you to my parents for transferring it to me as a gift. Otherwise, I would have been left without an apartment, too.
And yes, he is laughing as he writes this.
There were manipulations around the apartment, too.
Let us transfer part of it to our son.
But apparently the son was not quite the right option yet.
Then maybe transfer it to me instead.
In the end, it worked out. I managed to get that part back, but now I understand it was simply an attempt to get a piece of real estate, because all those speeches about how she had nothing of her own were way too frequent. Now I understand. It was not about her feeling safe inside the family. It was about safety for the moment when she decided to leave, which, in principle, is exactly how it ended.
Well, yes, friends. Otherwise, this letter would not have reached the channel.
And now, after listening to several stories from men in the same situation, I understand I was not alone. This story about a woman not feeling safe is often really a story about her wanting a financial cushion for the moment she gets tired of you and plans to leave. It is not about the kind of safety they shout about from every corner.
Here it needs to be interpreted a little differently. Sometimes it means, when I leave, I need a cushion, financial safety, a backup, and so on. But there is another problem. Once that cushion already exists by default, the thought appears along with it. Why not leave if I already have the cushion? Do you understand?
Let us continue.
After the divorce, by the way, she sold her car and bought herself a Ford Explorer, worth far more than she could afford, while not actually having the money for it. I still do not know whether it was just showing off, trying to attract some richer provider, or what exactly it was. But it turned out that the luxury life lasted about 4 months. After that, she sold the Ford and paid off the loan.
Something went wrong, friends. Yes, success and independence left Instagram and entered real life. That happens. At someone else's expense, why not? But on your own, it does not work so well.
It was not as easy and funny as it sounds. I still do not understand that decision. A new man had probably already appeared by the time she took the car, so even that does not quite add up. And then she lied about selling it, telling people the car was in the shop. Apparently, she was ashamed to admit it. People say all sorts of things about suffering after divorce, about how she suffered after divorce, but in my case it was not really like that. I suffered for about 6 months, then it let go.
6 months, huh? A real sufferer. We had a guy here recently who got divorced. It was in early December, I think. He went to his boss, told him everything honestly, and they understood. They gave him time off. Then the New Year holidays came right after. So once he found out he had an unplanned vacation, and this was literally days after the divorce, not even a week later, he gathered all his friends and threw a 2-day party. Then there was a hangover party on the second evening. Then he got his vacation pay on top of it, and they kept drinking for another week. Some of his friends even took time off work. One of them fought with his wife so badly he almost got divorced too. Because you have to support your brother, you understand? And here our author suffered for 6 months. Look at him.
Then he pulled himself together, found another job abroad, left the country, and simply started working hard. Life sorted itself out. It became more interesting and brighter. As we all know, many ex-wives are happy only when you drink yourself into the ground, or when everything is bad for you. The main thing is that you should not be doing well.
Why is that? Because then they start thinking about the decision they made earlier, about the divorce, and whether they were right.
The divorce, by the way, was initiated by, I think you already understand who. Of course, my ex-wife. And for many men back home, it is the same story. I say back home because on this channel I hear stories from different countries, so I will clarify. But overall, I have noticed there is almost no difference.
Why would there suddenly be a difference, brother? Where would it come from?
So what did it all lead to? Recently, my ex hooked on to a conversation, and of course I, being not very smart, decided to keep it going and remember the past. Naturally, hints followed that maybe we should bring everything back. After all, we have a son, and so on.
You understand, right? She is giving you a chance. A chance. Maybe you have not even earned it yet, but there it is.
The next day, before the conversation could really continue, I cooled off. Then I gave her the full picture, my position, my attitude toward what she had done, and everything else. This is exactly like the stories many people tell. Supposedly, if a woman left on her own, she will never want to come back. They all come back, or at least they want to, because they believe they are unique, one of a kind, and will find someone better in 2 seconds. Then they collide with reality.
Yes, friends. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, that is how it often works. After something ends, we all want something better. Maybe what ended was good, but people always want better. In this case, the process was started by the ex-wife herself, in the hope that life would become more fun, more comfortable, and maybe even more profitable. But something went wrong. On Instagram, yes, everything looks lively. In the real world, not so much. Let us return to the text.
Why did I unload on her? Simple. After we divorced, a couple of months later, my son started mentioning one particular name. A year later, when he spoke better, that name miraculously matched the name of someone she claimed was just his friend from the yard. It was actually the name of her current boyfriend. And during that recent conversation, after clarifying a few details, I realized that from the moment she left me, she had been living with that guy and still was. So it turns out some people do not just leave into nowhere. As everyone already knows, they leave only to another man. But even after leaving for another man, even while being in a relationship with him, they still try to turn everything back. Yes.
And over there, friends, the range of responsibility is a little different. By a little, I mean it falls far short of what she had while she was married. Back to the letter.
I have listened to many stories already, not only on your channel. In general, this whole movement really opens your eyes to their nature. But of course, like all men, you always think, well, mine is not like that. And in the end, it turns out she is exactly like that, maybe even worse. And here is the result. I am alone. Relationships are simply not interesting to me. And honestly, I am afraid of them because I do not trust them.
You just have something like arachnophobia, I guess. But every story always has a but.
Recently, I heard a story on your channel about a woman who was 35, had 2 children, and was still looking for the one. And of course, I think most of us have a neighbor like that. That is what happened to me. She was 36, with 2 children, and still looking for a better man. Her first child was from some random guy who, as far as I understood, either did not know or simply did not care about the child at all. Basically, he never appeared in that child's life, and apparently still does not. She had the second child with her husband, now ex-husband, of course. He was supposedly the same kind of disaster, fought with her, drank, did all kinds of nonsense. So we happened to meet and talk when she was without yet another admirer. I was a free man, and I was not against something light and casual.
Look at him writing casual. No, okay? That is what we call it now, yes? Light, casual relations and nothing more.
They lasted almost a year. Since I am often abroad, she was not bothered by that. She herself said she was not against something easy without a real relationship.
Of course, men who come and go, temporary visitors, that is our theme, right?
But naturally, after about a year, I was told that she needed a normal relationship.
And we all know what normal means in cases like this. A man tied down, financially dependent on access to her affection and carrying the responsibility.
Unfortunately, I apparently did not fit into that picture because she could not bend me in her direction.
Oh, because you are irresponsible, yes.
And by the way, when I came back for another vacation, literally a month after she told me she needed a normal man beside her, I saw her with another man right by the entrance. Visually, she was a little stunned. She clearly did not expect me to find out so sharply. But overall, she did not owe me anything.
Of course she did not. And this is important to understand.
So what happened? I was simply dumped with words that had nothing to do with reality. She had just found another man, and she needed a way to remove me from the picture. While we were involved, by the way, she was so wonderful, gentle, and affectionate that I almost wondered how such a stunning saint could have such a difficult life. But in reality, it was just demo mode. Demo mode designed to catch a younger, not very experienced man who was doing quite well in every sense and could probably make her life easier.
Yes, clever one. You saw through the plan.
Birthday gifts, New Year gifts, little surprises with provocative lingerie, and all the rest of it showed how badly she wanted to seem incredible. For a while, I even started getting used to her and enjoying her and her company. Movies at home with wine and good food, intimacy before even half the movie was over, as if everything were perfect, like in that romantic blockbuster. But from the story, it is already clear I was 5 years younger than her. And naturally, why would I need all of that? Two more children from different men. People like that are simply not capable at the deepest level of loving one man for life. Most likely it is dopamine addiction. They need emotions, constant swings, and all the rest of it. Otherwise, I cannot understand the way she lives. And in life, by the way, like many others, she is very independent. A car on credit, an apartment with a mortgage, two children barely held together by promises. But I think you understand what kind of financial support she was counting on.
Wait, what financial support? She is looking for a real man. Of course, we forgot friends. She does not need support. She is already independent. She just needs a real man. You understand? Huh?
So, with all this baggage behind her, she continues sorting through men, like that woman from one of the recent videos who said that at 35 she is no longer wanted by anyone.
Why not wanted him? For a while, she will do just fine. Every 6 months or every year, she has a new man. So technically, she is wanted. We all just understand what for. And why does she need these men? Friends. Correct. A statistical sample. The wider the sample, the higher the chance of landing on a provider. Mathematics, damn it. The author writes that it all started in a generally interesting and pleasant way.
We happen to talk. We happen to sit together, drink wine, complain to each other about our complicated lives. Then I helped her with a faucet, installed a router, all those little things that create direct attraction.
Yes, a router. Very exciting, of course.
The result, after all of this, is that I can say only one thing. If by chance I end up in the right place at the right time, the probability that she might visit me once is possible.
How bold.
But for anything beyond that, of course, no.
Irresponsible, yes. So we arrive at the fact that by the age of 30, most men understand that some people are physically incapable of love. That pure, selfless love that is not tied to anything. Although on every website, in every public page, in every messenger where people discuss anything at all, I constantly see claims that men cannot love. Hola. In the end, it turns out that the only one capable of selfless love is often the man. Friends, that is exactly how it is. But what is the problem? First, what is genuine, sincere love? It is endless admiration without the right of possession. And only a being with a fairly high level of morality is capable of that kind of love. The foundations of morality are conscience, a sense of measure, and intelligence capable of processing those first two concepts. On the other side, there is often nothing even close. They can repeat half of these words, but that is where it ends. You cannot explain to them, for example, what it means to keep your word or what friendship means. They know roughly what it looks like, but what it means at the level of human conscience, at the place where goodness begins, they cannot really enter into that. A man comes to a woman and says,
Remember, you promised me?
and she says,
Well, maybe I promised. So what? What do you want me to say? The situation changed. What promises are you even talking about?
that is why, when you start singing about love in your letters like some country ballad, you should understand what we are talking about. That kind of love was never there and never could be. There is physiology, it exists in boys and girls alike, that is nature. And the surge of hormones as an ordinary physiological process is something we habitually call love. But it is only a human desire to begin reproduction. That is all. Do not confuse one thing with another. Although, judging by this letter, the author understands all of this perfectly well. Let us continue. A man does not need anything from a woman except for her to simply be that woman. For these types, what is needed is stability. Read finances, responsibility. Read further finances, attachment. Read a provider. And of course, he must not judge her for her choice of fools with whom she had children, children for whom at this moment you are now supposed to carry responsibility. I observe that many young guys, 16, 18, 20 years old, are already paying attention to all this and beginning to understand what to look for and what to expect from young ladies in the future. Stories about how this affects demographics and everything else are interesting facts, of course, but it is better to damage demographics than to create more fatherless children, the author writes.
Thank you to the author of the channel. This may come out a bit messy, but I will try to tell my story.
Well, brother, you wrote it and I read it. The story is very interesting. Thank you very much for contributing to the right cause. Let us say a few words about the story. The man understood rather late that for years next to him there had been an ordinary trade in conditions. First, marriage through pressure. Either we get married or we break up. Then a child through the same pressure. Either we have a baby or we divorce. But that was not a family being built. That was a man gradually being pushed into the decisions someone else needed. The apartment is a separate line. A very familiar scheme. First, transfer part of it to the son. Then, very quickly, a better option appears.
Transfer it to me.
Words about safety in stories like this often mean one thing: she is preparing an exit with resources, or at least imagining one. The man is still thinking about family. She already has plans for withdrawal. Her attempts to pull him away from his parents are also understandable. The fewer people a man has around him, the easier he is to manage. I said this as the story went along. First, you need to convince him that his relatives do not love him enough. Then you become the only center of influence. Then you push him toward the needed decision. That is the switching of attention, resources, and everything else, with an attempt to anchor it all to herself. We talked about that earlier. After the divorce, everything is also revealing. A Ford Explorer on credit, an attempt to create the appearance of a new beautiful life, a new man nearby. Then the rollback after, what, 4 months? That was enough. Of course, that is not independence and not success. It is an attempt to sell herself for a higher price on a new market. But the market quickly showed the real price. And we know this market filters out trash very quickly. The attempt to return to the ex through conversations about the son is not love either. It is simply checking the old backup option. Life with the new man apparently did not turn out as tasty or as expected, so the approaches back began. First, let us remember what we had. Then, maybe we can bring everything back. Then the child becomes a leaver again, and so on. The story with the 36-year-old neighbor is from the same series. Two children from different men. Credit, mortgage, demo mode, gifts, tenderness, cozy evenings at home. All of that works until it suddenly becomes clear that a light format is not what is needed. A man is needed for the load. As soon as the man refused to let himself be tied down, the next one appeared quickly. So, what is the conclusion? A man needs to look not at words but at the pattern of behavior. If she constantly lacks something, if she pressures you about marriage, a child, an apartment, safety, money, a real man, what a man should do, and so on, then this is not about feelings, this is about control. It is about resources and how to pull them toward herself. The author kept the apartment in time. He did not let himself be stripped. He protected his interests. He did not let himself be dragged into the old pit. He understood in time that it was demo mode. And demo mode is not the real version of a person. It is just demo mode. Some men who have jumped through these demos say that more or less the demo is the same everywhere. They cannot even invent anything new. For example, many of them have the same default stereotypes switched on: cooking, cozy evenings, being sweet, creating the feeling that this is the path to a man's heart. Then comes the affection, the intimacy, the feeling that he is getting something rare. And after that begins the throw.
So, sweetheart, how about responsibility?
By then he is already hooked. The idea is simple. If he got attached to me and other options are not available to him, he will now stay attached. But once a man sees this whole system, once it opens up in front of him, it all collapses and becomes worthless. So if all of that is demo mode, the real version begins where demands appear: children, money, housing, so-called responsibility, and everything hiding behind that word. Friends, I hope I was convincing. Write in the comments what you think about this. For now, I say goodbye. Until the next episode.